Hello, once again. I'm Doc Rodden, and this is Horror News Radio, the official Gruesome Magazine podcast. Back with me again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-hosts on the net. And tonight we're reviewing Things Heard and Seen, streaming now on Netflix. Joining me tonight is Christopher G. Moore, the award-winning filmmaker. How you doing, sir?
It's good to hear and see you today.
See, that's why I brought him on. That was great. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this film that is streaming now on Netflix. We're going to give our initial impressions, and then we're going to talk about the film for a little bit. We're going to have to dive into spoilers when we do that because there's some stuff to talk about, some things we've seen, some things we heard. And then we'll wrap things up with our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. But what are we talking about? We are talking about Things Heard and Seen. Written and directed by Shari Berman and Robert Pulcini, based on All Things Cease to Appear by Elizabeth Brundage. The cast includes Amanda Seyfried, James Norton, Anna Sophia Heger, Natalie, we'll just go with that, Dreher, Karen Allen, F. Murray Abraham, Alex Newstender, Jack Cole, Rhea Seahorn, and Michael O'Keefe. The synopsis is: an artist relocates to Hudson Valley and begins to suspect her marriage has sinister darkness, one that rivals her new home's history. Marriage drama and supernatural. That's the mix. That's the mix. Is that a mix we like? Well, let's find out. What was your first impression of Things Heard and Seen there, Christopher G. Moore?
Yeah, I think the trailers sort of like don't really tell you everything, and so yeah, I was the film was very surprising. I think it has some really strong performances by the actors. I think Amanda Seyfried is amazing in this. And there's a lot of different, like Marion from Indiana Jones, or I guess Karen Allen from Indiana Jones shows up in a small part. But yeah, it's a really interesting character piece when it comes to the actors and stuff. And I think for me, one of the strongest things is the cinematography. The cinematographer is Larry Smith, who's worked on like Eyes Wide Shut and Only God Forgives, and he's worked on a few things. But I think the just the look and the shot selection in this is really, I mean, even just a simple thing like there's a part where the husband is laying on the bed when they first move into the house, and the lighting is more blue on his side and more warm on her side, and so even through the visuals you can sort of see like there's a disconnection between these two characters. And so I just love how they the visuals in this film really work well with the storytelling, and I think that's one of its strongest things now. And then once we get all these reveals about certain things about the characters, especially around the husband, you're like, it gets even more like interesting and intense, and there's also almost like a little ghostly things that are happening in the house that kind of start to play out. So yeah, I think it's kind of well crafted in the first 2/3, and then it sort of it sinks.
It sinks
without revealing too much. It kind of sinks in the end, and trying to tie up all those loose ends and try to like it doesn't find a good way to sort of make all that stuff kind of work for the ending, where it tries to be a little bit too the technical term artsy fartsy. It becomes a little bit artsy fartsy, literally artsy fartsy. Yes. If you watch it, you'll know what I mean. At the very end, and I was like, and you could see the limitations on their visual effects too. So yeah, I don't really like the way it sort of plays out, but I will tell you what, what's his name? James Norton, who plays George. I have never ever wanted to punch a movie character so much in his nose so much as that. I've never wanted to hate a character so much because he is this sort of like he's a definition of smart, like extreme smarmy, to where like he's trying to where he's like so overly confident and douchey, and he's like doing all these things, and he's gaslighting people and saying mean things while at the same time he's doing horrible stuff. As like, oh, I hate this dude so much. Please, Amanda's character, please leave him. And because she's such a, you have her character who has like so many different issues herself, and she's having to give up so much, and she's also got her own issues. And you find this out at the very beginning. She almost has like an eating disorder, so she has the kind of issues playing out. But then you have like they have a child, so that adds an extra thing in the equation. So, but yeah, I think it's got some really strong performances and some strong visuals. And I think the only thing that doesn't seem to work is towards the end. Although I don't really love these sort of sophisticated country hipsters that they show here. I just these sophisticates that sort of like just I've got a loom in my barn and I'm growing weed and all these. Oh, shut up. It's like, but yeah, I think it's again, it's got some really beautiful visuals, and I think that along with the performances make this a film to sort of to seek out, but at the same time, just know the ending is not as kind of goes off the deep end.
Yeah, it kind of drowns in its own ambitions, maybe.
That's a good way to say it.
Yep. Yeah, this is typical upstate New York, right? Let's say, so I was originally not even going to put this film on our schedule, but I caught the movie regardless because I wanted to see it because of the cast and Amanda and Karen Allen, to be honest. And I was actually surprised that of the haunted house movie that's kind of buried in this movie. It's wrapped in this infidelity, marriage drama, and the haunted house part of it is actually really good. It doesn't necessarily have the scares, there's a couple jump scares and stuff that you would want out of it, but at the same time there's a mystery in it, and that unfolds, and how that happens and how it relates to not only our couple that move into it, but some of the supporting characters that surround the story is really interesting and intriguing. And some of the flaws of the film is that they don't expand on that quite enough. I actually was really interested in that. But at the same time, they make this husband character, he's such a dick, and you figure it out pretty quick. And you're like, how can I really hate anybody more? 10 minutes later, you hate him more. Ugh. And 10 minutes later, you hate him even more. And it's like, how is this person, this person is a rotten human being. I was actually surprised by the reveals as we went along. I'm sure that other people out there are like, come on, they were right there. But, the paintings totally blew me away. Just how big of a douche this guy was. So in other words, you're rooting for Amanda's character really strong. But she's also, I kind of wish her character had a little bit more strength to her. I felt that she was a little underdeveloped in that respect, but at the same time, there's a couple scenes where you really understand her and get into her when she's at the party with, what was the actress's name? She was in Better Call Saul. What is her name?
Oh, Rhea.
Yes,
Justine.
Yes,
Rick
yes,
Seahorn is the actor. I
yes,
think she
yes.
was actually one of the strong points of this film was her character.
I really enjoyed her character. Yes, and she's one of the very characters you were defining that you didn't, the style of character that you didn't want to see. But at the same time, there's a scene between her and Amanda, and we're past my initial thoughts, by the way, that I thought really nailed the core of the film when Amanda Seyfried's character reveals how she feels in her particular spot. That she had all these aspirations, and suddenly they were married, suddenly they had a kid, suddenly they're here, and what is she? She's kind of lost herself, and the reaction that Janice has, is that her name? And is was really strong and hit home. I don't know. There was that part of it that I really liked, but the film is a little sloppy, a little messy, and you're right. The ending kind of drops the ball a little bit. Well, not a little bit, a lot of it, and it didn't necessarily stick the landing, as we like to say here. But at the same time, I don't think it necessarily sinks the entire film, but it does leave you kind of underwhelmed, unfortunately.
Well, and I don't know if maybe that's due to being based on the book All Things Cease to Appear, which I don't know to what level this adaptation for the screen or the small screen, I guess, how much they change from that, I don't know, but I think, I don't know. Maybe I'm sort of injecting too much of my own thoughts as a storyteller, filmmaker, to where it's like I feel like if you set up the thing that, I guess we're past the spoiler.
Yeah,
line.
Yep.
Okay. When you set up the thing that like these characters have other similar dead characters in the past that reflect them, you kind of hope that how things play out differently because of that interaction, especially when you have the Amanda Seyfried, her character is interacting with the ghost who was killed in the past, of the female ghost who's helpful. I love the helpful female ghosts where it's like in the very beginning you're like, oh, what the hell's this scare? And then you find out, oh, she's helpful. Because I love the part where he's like yelling her, and then the female ghost just closes the door and locks it. And I was like, yeah, get it, female ghost. It's like,
female ghost.
Get it, sister. I love that she's trying to be helpful, but then also you have her abusive husband ghost as well that kind of plays into which is a reflection of the guy. And I kind of hoped it was one of those things to where the ending would play out differently. Not to say that every film has to have a happy ending, but I think with her being this suffering character that really doesn't have any kind of full arc other than finding out revelations of things, or giving into her own inclinations with the farmhand or whatever. I kind of wish that it kind of played out differently, because then it's like once her character is like killed off, it just kind of, the whole film just falls limp, and it's more about like him trying to cover up all these things or whatever. But then it just like it becomes kind of lazy in that respect, to where then we have this big visual flourish at the very end involving him on that boat, and it's like it's not really as impactful. I mean, I think the only thing impactful was when he's killed off. F. Murray Abraham, by the way, Academy Award winning actors in this as well, who does a really great job. Plays another one of those sort of snooty academic characters that we have throughout this whole film. But his whole thing of like the artwork and how that plays into his little thing, I thought was very haunting and kind of cool. But yeah, I think like you mentioned previously, I think it would have been more interesting if they played more into the supernatural aspects of it. We have that a little bit, but then it just kind of like goes away once the husband is trying to cover up shit, you know.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole thing involving when she's looking into the drain. It's like, oh, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple bloody spots. You know, there is an axe murder, so you know there is stuff that happens.
Well, seance.
And there's the seance actually was pretty fun too.
Yeah, because the use of the table cover to sort of encompass the ghosts and stuff, which was kind of cool. But and then you know me, it's like this is not going to end well. This is not going to end well when you're doing a seance in your house. You're allowing those ghosts to be have more of a doorway for things. So
you're talking to the wrong one. But they're so optimistic though, that group. But yeah, anyway, to me it was. I don't know. I think I've already said this, but I like Amanda Seyfried's character, and I like that how she was investigating everything, and she realized that there's a whole history to this house, and she digs into it and finds out, even though people around her know that history, they don't want to tell her, they didn't want to share it. So, but she's still able to find it out, and I just really liked her character doing that, and there's this connection that she ends up having, with these women of the past, which I think is, part of the story, right? It's the main thrust of the story, is on both sides actually. And it still leaves you hanging at the end on, is it more than what she actually thought it was at the end. And I like that. I really like the ghost story. I didn't really care for all the marriage drama, but it was needed because that is the point of the story. But at the same time, I think the strength, or at least for me, but hey, I can recognize my own bias because we love horror films. So,
well, I mean, I didn't mind the drama as much because I think you see this sort of like, but I think this almost has a shining itis where the husband seems kind of a little bit self-centered and crazy from the get-go.
Yes, he does.
You know what I mean? And then you have like the Natalia Dyer character who kind of shows up, and then she kind of drops off until the end. So it's like you think that would be a little bit more integral to how things play out. But yeah, you have all these interesting things, but then it's almost like set up for these clashes to happen, but it still feels it doesn't feel warranted, I guess. So everything feels a little bit disconnected, like you said. And so I think that's why by the end, it doesn't hit powerfully by the end of it, because it's like there was never really no cohesive thread for that to make sense by the end.
Well, I like what you said about conflicts, because there's a variety of different conflicts that are given to us and shown to us, between romantic choices to, murderous choices, devious choices, to all kinds of things that never really get a resolution because of, a certain act that happens that right at the third act, right? It's the second act ends. And that kind of pulls the wind out of the sails, if you will, to make to keep going on that stream of thought there. But it, and I think it does a disservice for the film. I imagine that it's in the book and it works in the book because, reading it's a different experience, right? But as a film, it kind of needed to end it needed to end at the house, in my opinion. Once it got away from the house, I didn't care, right? It didn't really matter. And that's a huge flaw. And I think when you look online, you can see people recognizing that flaw.
Yeah. And it's one of those things to where it's like, throughout the whole film, they're talking about like, oh, do you notice this artwork on this book?
No.
This
Well,
is the book, and then it's sort of the ending is basically, hey, look at this artwork on this book. This is in real life, and it's like, ugh. I was like, it just felt a little bit too. Yeah, and that's when the artsy fartsy sort of comes into play, to where it's like it feels so forced. That's almost like you're trying to force feed me this image, and maybe that's what happens in the book where it goes. But again, books give more detail that you have to whittle down when it comes to making the. You have to figure out like which things do we keep, which things do we change or adapt, or what things do we add to make it more interesting. And it just felt a little bit too like, ugh, gag me with a spoon type moment where it's like, I didn't really need this. I think it would have, you've built this whole thing with the ghosts that reside in the house, but there's really no resolution to that either.
Nope, not at all.
Other than like, oh, now Amanda's ghost is next to the other woman ghost, and it's like
that was a little groan worthy too.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, and I think, I think the film kind of feels like it runs out of steam.
Yeah.
Because then we have like the whole scene where we keep flashing back between what happened before and back, and these visuals don't really work as well. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of potential in this film, and I think the visuals again make this film better than what it needs to be. But by the end, it kind of falls apart.
Yep. All right. Well, there you go. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's give our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. But before we do, if you're listening to our review and still hanging out with us, we want to thank you. We hope you're enjoying not only this review, but many others that we have on the site. If you want to help us out, hitting the subscribe button or sharing with a friend does wonders. All right. Let's wrap this up with our final thoughts, our score, and favorite scene. Christopher, have at it.
Yeah, so I think more than anything, if you have Netflix, it might be worth a watch just to see these wonderful performances by all the actors that are in this sort of compilation of different actors, from Nancy Wheeler from Stranger Things to Amanda Seyfried to Marion from Indiana Jones.
Yes.
You have all these F. Murray Abrams from was it Amadeus? So you have all these different people that really sort of bring these characters to life and sort of really add this sort of strong performances that sort of like that make you interested in some of the scenes that happen just based on their performances, even though the storytelling doesn't really work as well. And then the visuals, the cinematographer on this just hit it out of the park. There's some really beautiful shots in this, really well lit. Some sort of interesting transitions and stuff that I love my transitions that work really well. But I think in the process of trying to not only tell this sort of a domestic issues going on with supernatural things going on to it and then also just like the husband character. Again, I hate his character so much. I'm not sure if I can see this actor in anything else other than his dickhead character in this. I hate him. I hate him so much. I just like every time he do that little thing and then gaslight somebody, or just, I mean, there's like a horrible scene between him and the what is it, Ray, whatever her name is, the snooty wife character.
Mm-hmm.
That scene where he's holding her hands, it's really like, oh, it's really scary. But I feel like he's a character that like there's really no growth other than him just becoming more maniacal, creepy as he goes along. So there's really no arc to his character, and you don't really understand how he can go from just being someone that forges pictures to whatever happens. So I don't know. I think, but I hate his character. So kudos to him for making a character that I really thoroughly hate with all my heart. But yeah, I think the visuals and the characters, but I think the storytelling doesn't really work as well. And I think it ends on a very sour note, especially when you've you have all these interesting reveals with the past and the present and these characters. You really feel for the Amanda character, this situation that she's in with her husband being batshit crazy and manipulative, and him going off and doing whatever he wants to do, and then calling her out on shit and trying to gaslight her and trying to make characters like other people in her life look bad. It's like, I hate that type of guy. He needs to drown 20 times. So as for rating, I would give it a 3.25.
Oh, nice.
I think the visuals really stand out to me, and some of the performances, and I think that's strong enough to sort of give it mid-ground rating, but not really high enough to really deserve anything.
Right.
As for favorite scene, I'll have to say that when she pulls something out of the drain,
oh, nice.
that I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And then it doesn't even really, they don't even explain that.
Not at all.
It's not explained at all, but it's such an interesting visual, because even I was just like her. I was like, what is that? And then they close up, like, oh, that's what it is. So that image in itself is very impactful, even though there's a lot of visual things that happen in this film with the cinematography that's really gorgeous. There's this great scene where you see Natalia Dyer, her character, riding off on a horse and this huge vista of green and trees and stuff. It's like, wow, they really did a great job of where they set up these shots and stuff. That really, so this film deserves more than what the cinematography could throw its way.
Somebody spent a lot of time on the color correction on that one, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree with you. This film, there's a lot going on in it. Like you said, there's two stories going hand in hand. You've got the family drama, and then you also have this haunted house story, a ghost story, a literal haunted house story. We've seen a lot of elements of the haunted house part of it in other films. It has its a few unique twists of its own. And so does the drama part, to be honest with you. But you're right. I think this is one of those films where the second act is actually its strongest part. Sometimes film can really, hook you in the beginning and then kind of meander in the middle and then nail it at the end. But this one doesn't nail it at the end. It's kind of at the beginning, but then in the middle, it really kind of weaves this interesting series of these two tales together. But you're right. The husband, I should say, doesn't have an arc. He's just bad. All he is exposed. And so that's unfortunate. And I think Amanda, you could debate whether Amanda's character does or not. She just basically has a realization of who she is and what's going on. And so it doesn't have that element to it, and it needs it. I'm kind of talking myself out of liking it as much as I did. I for some reason, when I watched it, I was really into it and liked it until the ending. And I thought, once it's all cover up, it's kind of like, bleh. But getting there, I was kind of like, what's going on? And I did. You hate this guy, then you hate him more, and then you hate him more, and then you can't believe how much you hate him. It's really kind of interesting, reveal after reveal after reveal. So I was going to give it a very generous 3, and you gave it more than that. So I don't know, maybe it's not as generous, but I just, like you said, it's the acting and the filmmaking itself that win you over. There's some really fun stuff, and there are some creepy things. It doesn't necessarily have the scares you would want, but this film isn't hinged on that, so I don't feel that that's a strike against it. My favorite scene is okay. So, I mean, there's an obvious scene I could go with an axe, but I'm going to actually let that one slide. I'm going to go with the dinner scene for two reasons. One, it reveals that his father is also a dick.
It's in the DNA,
It's in
the dick
genes.
DNA.
It's in the genes. But there's a reveal about the paintings that just made this person the most despicable person ever on the planet Earth. at least in the cinema world, right? It's just like, oh God, did you really? That is horrible. Oh my God.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have this character who, we think, oh well, he has this other side, this other creative side, and you find out that's all a sham too. So it's like this guy has no redeemable qualities whatsoever.
I know, the last thing was wiped off the table. It's like, who are you? Oh well. There you go. That's our review for Things Heard and Seen. It is streaming now on Netflix. We hope you enjoy not only the movie, but our review of it. Christopher, thank you for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, thanks. As always, I always enjoy sort of seeing these things and sort of us dissecting it and say what we, saw in it or heard in it. I really shoehorned that in, just like the ending of this film.
You did. Let's go ahead and just sail off into the sunset. All right, let's say good night.
Good night.